I'm here with Irfon Watkins from DOVU. DOVU are one of the sort of hottest startups in the new mobility space in the UK. The guys spoke at Auto Connect, which is our event last year. Just catching up with them after sort of 7 months. They've had a busy time, so perhaps the best way to start is for you just to give a quick overview of what DOVU is and what you're about.
Yeah, sure. So we started DOVU a couple of years ago. And the idea of DOVU really is that we're going to tokenize user and customer behavior in the mobility space. What I mean by that is a token that you can earn by doing different types of behavior. So for example, you can earn a DOVU token by charging your electric vehicle in the correct way, or in a certain time of day, or a certain part of town, and that's rewarded in your wallet, which is really an app. And then it can be redeemed really against other mobility services and solutions. So you can earn your token by charging your vehicle, and then you can spend it by hiring a bike for an hour.
So DOVU kind of straddles two of the most talked about areas of new technology, blockchain and also mobility. There's a lot of kind of public misconception. People, particularly around the blockchain, people confuse it with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So perhaps you should just explain in your own words a quick overview of the blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. So blockchain needs to be looked at separately from the tokens or currencies that sort of exist as an application on top of it. Blockchain is really a ledger. It's a distributed ledger, and it should only really be used if you are, building a service or a solution where you need to ledger something that is immutable, where trust doesn't exist really. So if you think about blockchain and Bitcoin, the reason why blockchain was needed for Bitcoin was that Bitcoin as a currency was transferred without any central bank. Yeah. So the blockchain was that ledger. So you could transfer currency between different parties and then have a trusted ledger that sits there because you don't trust each other. It's a human nature. So that's what blockchain is. Not the technical aspects of what it is, but really how it should be used. I think when you're building a service or a solution, is it should be that sort of element of technology that provides the trusted part of the equation when you're building a solution.
Sort of building on from blockchain, you recently announced that you'd joined the Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative, I think, MOBI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some huge companies in there, Ford and GM, I think, as well. Yeah. What are the kind of aims of that sort of group?
Blockchain is a decentralized ledger, and really things need to be decentralized as well, I think, when it comes to building standards and learnings, from some of the proof of concepts and pilots that have been done in this space. Yeah. And I think that the exciting thing about MOBI is that we're seeing, and I think there are 30 companies and we were one of them in the sort of launch of MOBI, all looking to collaborate to create some set of standards and guidelines in terms of how we can sort of grow and accelerate the development of blockchain within the mobility space. So it's about sharing. It's about collaboration and sharing those learnings in order to speed up the technology.
How data is used has become a really key issue in mainstream media as well, because of following Cambridge Analytica scandal and the recent GDPR updates. In the kind of automotive industry, particularly amongst sort of fleet and leasing companies, there's real nervousness that the OEMs now are realising the value of data, and they might restrict their access and various things. As DOVU, you come from a kind of different angle entirely, which is that actually the data generated by your journeys belongs to you as a driver or a participant in that journey. But you've worked with some of the hugest OEMs, so JLR obviously, and your recent trial with BMW. Kind of how did that come about?
I think the discussion, or the ongoing discussion against sort of what is private data, what is data that's needed to provide better safety for the car, that the OEMs need in order to deliver their product or their service, against what the driver is sort of giving away, is ongoing and is yet to be determined. I think that the challenge about data regarding what petrol station I stop at, how many people are in my car, what journey I've been on, how often I stop, what route I take, undoubtedly is personal private data. and how you share that and who you choose to share that with. I think that should be under your control, as an individual, and GDPR goes some way, I think, to sort of to dealing with that. From our perspective, we're not jumping, in front of data owners and sort of saying you need to do this, or coming up with a firm opinion to sort of say this is how data should be used. What we are doing is creating a system where you can be rewarded for sharing that data, and whether that's if you're the data owner, so if you are an OEM and you perceive that data to be yours, but you like to reward your customer, to encourage the sharing of that data, then we'll facilitate that. But ultimately, the discussion about who owns it and who doesn't own it, that's outside of our pay grade. For our side, we're focused in really on probably creating some new data points. So if we can tokenize behavior and nudge people using sort of nudge theory and gamification, great sort of buzzword bingo if you're playing it, to do certain things that they're not used to do. So if you look at transport and how we go about our daily life, we normally take the same journey to work that we always do, using the same form of transport that we always use. And if we drive into work, we may drive past a great little yellow bike that's there, and we go, oh, that's really cool, they've got those yellow bikes you can use by an hour, as we drive past and struggle to find a parking place. Sometimes we need a nudge in order to change our behavior. And just because the technology is there and the services are there and all these proliferation of mobility solutions come out, you need a nudge to get out of your little comfort zone and to do something different. So what we do is we use tokens as a way of nudging the individual to try something different. And that creates its own data set. As to whether they tried it or they haven't tried it. So that's really where our sweet spot is. It's not really, what DOVU isn't, we're not an API sort of a marketplace for data that we're just gathering data and then, putting it in the warehouse and reselling it. We're really about creating some new data points and encouraging people to, experiment and trial new forms of mobility, but also educating and informing and encouraging people to use the new technologies that are coming out, such as your battery on your electric vehicle. How should you charge it? Where's the best place to charge it? Can you be encouraged to charge it off-peak as opposed to on-peak? And if 10 people in the same zone want to charge it all in the same charging point, encourage people to try a different zone. So all of those creates new data points, and that's really what DOVU is about.
So one of the kind of biggest conversations in mobility at the moment is about multimodal, and you've obviously kind of touched on that in your previous answers. At the moment, you've focused on the auto industry to start DOVU. Are you looking to build those partnerships to move into, say, bike sharing and scooters and all these weird and wonderful combinations that are coming out?
So if you look at the sort of history of DOVU, really, we sort of span out of InMotion Ventures, the sort of the venture arm with Jaguar Land Rover. So it was a natural home for us, really, to sort of work with the OEMs. And as you said, we did a pilot with BMW. And we've got multiple other sort of pilots and projects with other OEMs that we're working on. So what's interesting about that, however, is if you just follow the investment of the OEMs, and you'll find yourself in multimodal sort of industries. So you just take a look at what all of these OEMs have been invested in, whether that's Lyft, whether that's public transport, bikes, the whole range. So if you're going to offer a multimodal service, sometimes it's a good point to start with the OEMs, and then you can sort of work by, certainly with our solution, where you're looking to redeem the tokens that you've earned across a multimodal service, and you can do that within the ecosystem that's already been created. Having said that, we are in the early stages of working with one US state and 5 cities within that state on using the token as a way of encouraging not only the sharing of data for your transport, but also encouraging, as a citizen of that state, places to park, times of the day to use your journey, you know, and encouraging different modes of transport for those citizens as well, because it is a challenge trying to get US citizens out of the car, and so again, anything that can be done to sort of nudge that is going to be sort of useful. So yeah, we started with the OEMs, we'll continue with the OEMs and the multimodal investments that they're sort of making, but also separately start to experiment with smart cities.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned a few times about BMW and the OEMs. The trial, I think you published sort of some of the information quite recently. Just as a small business learning, sort of working with a much larger company, what learnings did you guys get from that? How was the experience?
Yeah, I mean, for us it's been, it was a fantastic experience working with BMW. The key really is getting the right sponsorship, you know, at the executive level within those organisations, and we've got some, you know, the very highest level there, you know, really supported our initiative. The other thing is to be very, you know, reasonable in terms of what it is that you're looking to achieve when you start off working with an organisation like that. We're a young, you know, sort of, well, not me, but the company is a young startup, and I think you're not partnering, you know, therefore you need to be really focused at what it is that you want to do within a very limited sort of time frame. So we focused on a very, you know, fairly simple use case, and delivered on that in a sort of over a 10-week time period, and you know, it's proven to be very successful.
Yeah, you carry on obviously beyond the sort of 10 weeks. Is there?
Yeah, it's still live. It's out there. It's going out. So so we built a wallet branded by Alphabet, and that wallet is in the app stores. And the use case was really simple. You know, so if you look at it from a fleet perspective, one of the challenges from fleet is maintaining an ongoing relationship with your customer, and really understanding how many sort of miles they're driving in their car, and encouraging them to report that back. It's a perennial problem for sort of fleet. So by creating a really simple smart contract and a wallet, and then just encouraging the driver to take a photo of the dashboard, capture the mileage, you know, upload. That goes up to Alphabet, and then for that they receive a DOVU token. So really simple use case, not, you know, relying upon connected cars or autonomous vehicles or anything in the future. It's stuff that can be done now on any vehicle, you know, but it's using blockchain, it's using a wallet, it's using, you know, a token, and I think more, you know, importantly, the end user, the driver, doesn't need to know about any of that. It doesn't need to know it's on blockchain. They don't need to have any of the hassles that would be associated right now with owning some cryptocurrency. They just sort of type in their username, type in their password, download the wallet, and you know, take the photo, press a button, get a token.
Yeah, and those tokens, what could they? Is it like a
so they'll be redeemed? So they can be redeemed within the BMW sort of ecosystem. Right. So so that's how that particular project will go forward.
As part of your kind of offering, you mentioned quite a lot about a marketplace. So what kind of, how's that going to work? What kind of services are going to be on there? Is it offers from people to consumers for their certain types of data, or how do you see that kind of working?
So I think that if you take a look at where this whole tokenization and blockchain sort of movement is heading, I think we need to sort of you know, not think about sort of voucher systems or you know, the marketplaces as we currently see. So as we go forward, you know, there's going to be a proliferation of tokens. So right now, I think there are about 6,000 tokens out there, and that's just growing and growing and growing. So the idea is that you'll be able to really, within your wallet, which will act as a sort of marketplace or an exchange, you'll be able to quickly transfer by your thumb, really one token for another token.
Right.
So you'll be, so, you know, by generating value in one area, you'll be able to transfer it somewhere else. So the idea that can be, you know, it can be, you know, maintained within a mobility space. But, you know, the beauty of earning a reward is that as a consumer, you want to have the freedom to spend it how you want to spend it. So, you know, don't restrict it in that way. I think that the bit that sort of gets more interesting though, so you know, you've got this freedom of transferring, which you can't do if you're, I don't know if you earn Tesco Club points or Nectar points or whatever. So that's one thing. You don't control the environment. The other bit that's really interesting is that the organisations such as BMW, sort of Jaguar, and others that we're going to be working with, who are going to be providing the tokens as a result of doing some activity, can still start to still use their first-party data around the customer, and then they're able to provide special, you know, sort of bonuses, special events, special activities and services on top of the token, specifically for their customer base. So yes, the tokens can be liberated and free, and you know, and enter into any marketplace that's out there, but still there can be special curated sort of pieces of services and content and you know, for that particular brand.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's incredibly powerful for brands. It's, you know, potential avenue for car launches or experiential kind of things. You know, visit our stand at such and such an event, and you'll get a VIP treatment because you've got certain thresholds. So I can really see that actually working.
Yeah, and if you start to look at, you know, it's actually the tokenizing, you know, tokenization, you know, whatever the right word is, of that sort of customer behaviour. You know, and of the so as I say, if there is a car launch, then you want to encourage someone to go to that launch. You know, if you want to test drive, you want to encourage somebody to do that. So again, using simple smart contracts and using that instant process of getting that reward instantly, not having to wait 30 days and seeing if it updates in your account. And you know, that's really interesting. And then if you add sort of the gamification aspect into the wallet, then you can be top 10. You know, top 20, course, you know, and then you can start to have that element of it where it sort of says, I'm the top 20 sort of most valuable sort of, you know, brand ambassador, you know, in the region, in the country, you know, on the planet, whatever that is. So things, you know, we're used to that type of thing in the games that people play on their phones, you know, whether that's you're playing Candy Crush, and you know, they're gamifying you to sort of encourage you to certain activities. You know, then really that's what sort of smart contracts, gamification, and wallets and tokens can do. It's just to encourage and nudge people to certain types of behaviour.
So we've touched on cryptocurrencies quite a bit as we've been talking. Obviously, the public's perception is really clouded by last year's explosive growth in Bitcoin, and to a lesser extent Ether and various other crypto coins. Do you see the DOVU token that you're making as a store of value for speculation and investor, or is it more about exchange and a daily use? How do you see your token?
Yeah, good question. I think there's a sort of separation needed really between a cryptocurrency, which is really designed to replace so-called fiat currencies, government-backed sort of currencies. So instead of using a dollar, I'll use Bitcoin. And separate that out from tokens, and tokens as a utility, tokens as that delivers some extra value. So from DOVU's perspective, we're not a currency. We're not looking to replace the pound or the dollar or the euro. So you're not going to be buying your car, you know, in DOVUs. You know, you might, you know, and you will in Bitcoin. So that's the sort of separation, and I think that the utility aspect of it is, yes, you can buy one of our tokens from an exchange, but you need to be able to redeem that token once you've bought it for a service, for something else, and it's not just there sitting on an exchange for speculation. So you know, you can't stop that. It's when something is on an exchange, it's nearly impossible to stop that. But DOVU's sort of business model is to enable somebody to, as I say, one, it's all about earning it, you know, and but as I say, if you do want to buy it on an exchange, then you have that token, and it's there to be used within our ecosystem and be more valuable within that ecosystem than it would be just for pure speculation.
So some people watching this video may be aware that you were featured in the March issue of Wired magazine in the UK, talking about your ICO or initial coin offering. Would you recommend that as an experience for other businesses, as a way of raising money? How was the process?
Yeah, it was a interesting process. It's a very new way of fundraising, and you have to learn a lot as you go along. Luckily, we had some great advisors. We engaged sort of KPMG early on in the process. We were lucky enough to have Lars Claviter on board, who was on the original Ethereum project board in 2013, but also the ex-CTO of Rolls-Royce. So having some experience of the OEM industry and the sort of crypto industry, I think he's pretty unique in that, really. And then having some sort of advice and setup from sort of KPMG. Having said that, you then leap into the unknown, and then you're operating in a world where you've got countries like China banning them, and then you've got America really unsure about what the heck to do, and so there's a whole range of political and economic sort of situations that are out there. But the key for us really is that if you're straightforward, you're very transparent about what it is that you're looking to build as a business, what you're going to use the funds for, what you're looking to raise, then we were very confident of sort of that approach. That method of fundraising isn't going away, and I think in the first quarter of 2018, $5.4 billion has been raised through that form of funding. Pretty much exactly the same amount as done last year. So there's a huge amount of money coming into it. It's a great way of capitalizing your business in a way that you can start to think about building your business 3 years out. Because the traditional method of funding a tech business can be very prohibitive. You go through your seed round, then you got your A round and your B round, and for that you have to sort of focus on some short-term goals in order to do that. And sometimes those short-term goals aren't the right goals to be looking at. So for us to be able to think about longer-term goals, and also the route of sort of doing a token sale, an ICO, is that you're actually not focused on your exit because you've created liquidity as a founder in your business. So the age-old question is like, what's your exit strategy? Which is nuts. The idea that I'm sat there trying to build a business and I'm already thinking how I'm going to sell it. And I'm encouraged to do that because a venture capital company, wants me to do that, wants me to think about that exit. Is just counterintuitive. Most entrepreneurs make that up. Oh, it'll be a trade sale, it'll be an IPO. Basically, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't have to think about that as a CEO. I think about building the business and what does it look like 3 years from now. We have enough capital, to get our business to where it needs to get to, without thinking about exit, without thinking about another fundraise. And then in terms of the process itself, it's anybody who's done crowdfunding. It's a sort of it's that, but sort of like on steroids. It was exciting, and I highly recommend it.
Cool. There you go. Just sort of getting away from now, those 3 years you alluded to, maybe beyond that. Obviously, mobility is going through a huge change. I think even conservative estimates now are saying that within 10 years there will be autonomous, either semi-autonomous or fully autonomous vehicles on our roads. What do you see for the kind of future of the token and DOVU in that future?
I think it's really exciting. I think the idea that if you look at an autonomous fleet, if you look at this sort of a street with autonomous cars in, then there's going to be sort of like a programmatic negotiation between vehicles for overtaking rights. So how do I want to go to a meeting, I'm willing to pay to overtake everybody in the next 10 minutes to get to that meeting. How do you negotiate cross-platform with multiple OEMs? That type of negotiation. Tokens going to play a big part in that. Because you can then sort of as I say I'm going to offer 10 DOVU tokens to every car that gets out of my way, and then go down that path. I think that the entertainment that you're going to be consuming, again, how do you pay for that? So there's going to be lots of different transactions sort of taking place, and I think that when you look at blockchain, when you look at smart contracts, And then you look at tokenization, in order to facilitate the sort of payment of that. I think that's where this whole technology sort of really blossoms.
Yeah.
And when you tie insurance into that, and entertainment in the cars, all that other range of things, as I say, tokens, blockchain, and smart contracts, you can definitely see where they fit into that environment.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you make about interoperability, which is already a problem, and I can imagine that the autonomous future is going to be, unless we get some sort of open standard, that's going to be a huge headache, isn't it?
Yeah, which brings us, nicely onto Moby.
Yeah,
so,
of course. Right.
So if you are going to have an industry-wide sort of, open blockchain initiative, then that's really it. So it's a case of creating those standards so that they can operate across multiple platforms that the OEMs and other mobility providers are creating.
Yeah. So obviously that we just jumped into the future. What about now then? Obviously, I think this year you've said that you're kind of concentrating on your platform and building it out. What does the rest of 2018 look like for you?
Hard work, I mean, it's getting back to, we've done the excitement of the token sale, and now it's really, back to basics, which is recruiting, developing, working with customers, all the normal things really that any startup or early stage sort of business needs to do. So we've got a really strong pipeline of pilots that we're working on. We've developed some really strong use cases. And we won't take a pilot on unless it furthers the development of our use cases.
Yeah.
And but we've got a really, as I say, a healthy pipeline. It's about recruiting really, and one of the challenges in this exciting sort of nascent industry that we're at is that developers are hard to find. So it's about getting really those individuals excited and fired up about the mission that we're on. And then getting them on board, and then my job is to get out of the way really and allow them to do really well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It sounds so exciting. Listen to you talk about kind of where you're taking the business and what's going on. I can't wait to see what you guys are going to come up with.
Thank you.
For those of you who kind of want to know more about DOVU, obviously there's lots of information on the DOVU website, but we've also got our lecture from the AutoConnect event last year, which is on our Clarity blog, so check that out for a bit more in-depth information, and hopefully we'll get to chat to you again.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.